At his latest press event, I suppose, we heard one of the most powerful statements from the president about building that wall. Strangely, it wasn't Donald Trump, it was Joe Biden, who said he wants to restart construction on the wall because there's been an ongoing crisis at the border that's been exacerbated by Joe Biden himself. Talk about amazing hypocrisy and an amazing I told you so. Like, what do you say to all these people who voted for Biden, where it's like, oh, you know all that stuff Trump was doing? Turns out it was working. And then you voted for Biden to do something else. And within a few months, he realized what Trump was doing was working. Now you got the B team because Donald Trump, compared to Joe Biden, was at, I hate to say it, but Donald Trump was the A team. Now you get the B team. So Joe Biden's only recourse, I suppose, is to do exactly what Trump was doing. It's amazing. He's actually going back on all of their promises. He said, we're not going to build that wall. We're going to stop building it. Beto O'Rourke actually said, tear the wall down. All the activists were like, shut down these child migrant facilities. We had AOC saying these are concentration camps. And it's not my opinion. It's expert analysis. Where's she at now? She's tweeting that concentration camps are actually just influx facilities with controversial records. Boy, that's one way to put it. Amazing. We were only a few months in and Joe Biden has already realized that Trump was right. How incredible is that? So we're going to talk about this among other things. There's another really funny story. Apparently, Jordan Peterson is like the basis for the Red Skull in the new Captain America comic, which for some reason these woke leftists love defending Nazis. It's the weirdest thing. Of course, they'll call a conservative a Nazi, but when it comes to literal Nazis like the Red Skull, they're like, Let's model him after Jordan Peterson, who is a mainstream and popular personality among regular people. Sure, they might try and claim that Jordan Peterson is fringe or whatever, but if you actually look at Jordan Peterson and the coverage he's gotten, New York Times bestseller, new book coming out, he's appeared on talk shows, not super political, not super controversial. That's what they're claiming is the bad guy. That's creepy stuff. We'll talk about it. Joining us today is Josie, the redheaded libertarian.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, do you want to just give a quick little introduction?
My name is Josie, and I am on Twitter at the TRHL, and
you're a libertarian.
I'm a Ron Paul libertarian. I'm a real libertarian, not any of that LP crap.
Ooh, those are fighting words. The Libertarian Party was yelling at me. The Libertarian Party of Texas was yelling at me.
Oh.
Remember when Joe Jorgensen tweeted, it's not enough to not be racist. We must actively be anti-racist.
You know, I got blamed for that.
You got blamed for that?
I got blamed for that.
Why did you get blamed
I
for
have
it?
nothing to do with that abomination, but someone thought that I tweeted that for some reason.
What?
I have no idea who tweeted that. I don't know. I don't care who tweeted that.
Joe Jorgensen tweeted it.
No, it was people who work for her.
Right. Mm-hmm. Oh, they thought you
So
were...
they thought I worked for her and I tweeted, and it was a rumor that I tweeted that. And I'm like, that's bizarre, but yeah. So
I just loved the idea of the Libertarian Party telling people what they must do.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of the opposite of what you're supposed to be, preaching. Like, remember when that guy got on stage and took his clothes off?
Yeah.
The
That
Libertarian
party
is
is just
great.
devolved into,
Oh, Libertarian Party.
oh my God.
Were they at one point awesome, like regular libertarians?
Yeah, they used to be normal. Now they're not normal. Yeah.
Now there was apparently a couple of years ago, there was a debate over whether or not an individual should be allowed to sell drugs to kids.
Yep.
Oh yeah, Austin Peterson, shout out.
Yeah,
Was
right.
that his
He's
argument?
great.
No, that was him. He said no.
Are you nuts?
And everybody booed him.
They booed him when he said
They
no?
booed him when he said no because he wouldn't sell the
wow.
drugs to the kids.
Yeah.
Like, there's a line, man.
No, I mean there's
dude.
there's things that the Libertarian Party nowadays skews to the point where I don't even like to associate with it. I started this as a Ron Paul libertarian, a small L, understanding property rights, self-ownership, personal responsibility, accountability, and the non-aggression principle. And it's devolved into this Marxist, all the talking points.
How weird is that, right? It's like the worst part of wokeness, but with pro-corporate authority.
It's the opposite. And so if you think about, for instance, we want to abolish the borders, that's right out of the Communist Manifesto. That's chapter 2. You can go ahead and get it from the library or your Marxist neighbor and read it. Chapter 2, it talks about abolishing nations, abolishing borders, taking that stuff down. And it's there should be a path to immigration, an easy path to immigration. You should like show up, say, hi, I'm a stonemason. Here's my family. I fled Venezuela. Please let me in. They go, all right, let's do fingerprints. Oh, you're not a terrible person. Go in. You can't get benefits for 2 years.
Placement.
Yes.
Figuring out where they can survive and not be tossed randomly into a gutter is one of the big problems.
Yes.
So all the open borders people, it's like, send them to the ghetto. Like, no, we want to fix that. So we'll rag on the Libertarian Party. There's much to rag on.
Yes.
We got Ian. He's
What
chilling.
up, everybody?
Ian's wearing a brown shirt.
Ian Crossland here, hanging out with this awesome periodic table of the elements with a piece of each element, in it, except for the radioactive ones.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
that would be bad
A
for
few
you.
other
Be
choice
really
elements,
bad.
but there's literally a piece of each element in this acrylic. It's very.
But
cool.
does every single radioactive element emit gamma waves?
I don't know.
Because it's the alpha and beta particles. I guess they emit gamma radiation. That's I don't know enough about it.
You're the chemist, though.
Me, I'm not.
Yeah. Well,
We also got Lydia pressing buttons.
I am pushing buttons in the corner. I'm Sour Patch Lids. And Josie's hair makes my hair look completely brown, not red at all. So I'm enjoying this red-haired company.
We absolutely must talk about Joe Biden wanting to build that wall. Before we do, my friends, smash that like button, subscribe, hit that notification bell. We are so close to 1 million subscribers, and with your help, we will get there. So thank you all so much. If you're listening on iTunes or Spotify, leave us a good review because it helps as well. But go to timcast.com first and foremost. Become a member to get access to members-only exclusive posts, even full episodes. We've got a huge library of content that we've been expanding and building up now. We're doing about 4 per week, which means we've been doing this for a few months. There's probably several dozen videos that you could watch from all of your favorite guests, like James O'Keefe, like Seamus from Freedom Tunes, and Jack Murphy, and even Michael Malice. And you will get that if you become a member. But becoming a member helps support the show in the event that we get banned. This is where we will have all of our content. And we had to set it up because, as you've seen with like Steven Crowder, for instance, yeah, they're getting ban happy. And it's possible, but we have a bunch of really awesome stuff in the works. I'm having pitch meetings with people about doing shows and doing movies and just actual content. So we might actually have a content library of TV shows and stuff. Should be a lot of fun. Again, timcast.com. And again, smash the like button. Share the podcast. Let's talk about Biden building that wall. We have the story from the Daily Mail. Biden now wants to restart construction on Trump's border wall to plug the gaps with kids' camps way over capacity and a new surge of migrants coming from Guatemala. This is amazing. Joe Biden actually shut down the construction as soon as he gets in because people like Joe Biden and the people who voted for him, look, I'm trying to be nice. I'll be respectful. I understand a lot of people just didn't know what they were voting for when they voted for Biden. They hear something. There's no logical basis to it. It's just an emotional reaction. The wall is racist. Donald Trump is the Cheeto dictator, so the wall must be stopped. So Biden gets in and goes, yeah, come on, we're gonna stop the wall. You gotta, get the straight razor in the barrel and then bang it on the fence and make it come down. And then he stops construction. And then all of a sudden, we're dealing with this massive border crisis. Why? Because Biden basically signaled to all of these individuals in other countries, open for business. What did Biden say? Moratorium on deportations for 100 days. He lost that fight, but he still said it. So these people are thinking, under Trump, they're going to throw you out. At least you can try and get some media pity under Joe Biden. So here they come. Now Joe Biden has no choice but to reopen the child detention centers. He's putting children under bridges in McAllen, Texas, to sleeping in dirt. And now he's going to rebuild the wall. I got to say, I wonder if the Trump supporters are going to be like, all right, we'll take the win on that one. We were worried we weren't going to get the wall, and now Trump's going to build the wall. So how very that's strong leadership from Joe Biden, right?
Yeah. He actually said that he inherited this crisis. It was exactly like this. We just didn't hear about it because the media never would have smeared Donald Trump.
That's right. That's
No,
right. Yeah.
never.
Is it because of like a global recession that we're getting this influx of migrants, or have we always?
Well, so there are seasonal waves. That's true. And Joe Biden tried claiming, there's no crisis. It's seasonal wave. Come on, man. And what's actually happening, because ABC, I think ABC and NBC journalists interviewed some illegal immigrants who are like, it's because Joe Biden says he's going to be nice and he's giving us an opportunity to come. So you actually had, I can't remember who it was. I think it might have been CNN, where they were like, you can't deny this. You actually have, no, I'm sorry. It was Jonathan Karl. I think he was talking to Brian Stelter. Brian Stelter of CNN was like, these are right-wing talking points. And this guy from ABC is like, no, it isn't. Our reporter went down and the illegal immigrant said it's because of Biden. Well, there you go. You vote for a guy who screws it up, and now the best he can offer is trying to do what Trump was already doing.
It is true that the words of the president have resounding impact. Like when Trump was like, "Get him out of here, hit that guy," or something at a rally, and then you started to see this wave of people punching people.
He said something like, I would hit him and, I'll pay the legal fees or something like that.
Someone decked a guy at one of his rallies. So it does. And if Biden mentioned that, even in passing, I can imagine it would definitely be affecting people.
So there's one of the big problems with Trump during his presidency. But he did stop that. That was early in his campaigns. And then he was like, no, we can't do that. We'll let the police handle it. Because he realized, I can't tell people to do something like that or support in any way. But with Donald...
I think some of that was going from being a celebrity. It's pretty much like you. It's like you feel like you're going through another country. Dearborn.
But they speak English enough, and so it works. Like I've been to Dearborn a couple times, and a lot of the businesses it's written.
So they've
Arabic.
Assimilated. I've never seen it. We were talking about the Swedish community, and I was wondering if American.
I would say it was very similar in that you go there, or at least when I went there. There are areas where everything's in Arabic, and you go to a restaurant, they can speak English, and I had a great time.
Hungry.
To be honest, I understand maybe there are some concerns, about maybe gangs or extremism, or whatever. When I went there, went to a car wash, everybody was really nice. Went out to eat. We went and got Mediterranean food. It was amazing. It was like legit, made by people who knew how to make, falafel and hummus and all that good stuff. So I don't know. It is an issue of. How can one community work with another community or the greater community if they don't understand each other? But I'm not entirely convinced that can't be navigated somehow. Like it's the worst thing in the world. You know what I mean? I don't think people need to. I'll put it this way: I don't think they need to be fluent in English. They need to be able to communicate. We need to be able to communicate with each other to a certain degree. So I don't know how you solve for that. I do agree with you on the refugee point, though. Economic migrants who are coming here for work and for jobs should be able to interact and work with other people, and that requires probably a basic level of English because we are a predominantly English-speaking country.
Yeah, it's good to be able to work, but I also think there's a huge part of life that is not work. I basically live for my work. I really enjoy working, and I like being able to talk to all you guys. But at the same time, if you want to be able to actually be a part of the culture that you're in, you have to be able to speak well enough in the language that whatever country that you're in, that you have to be able to go out and meet in groups. You have to be able to meet other people who already live there. I do think that fluency is a huge benefit to people who come to the U.S.
I wonder if this multiculturalism it's something that's been in America for a long time. And I wonder if it's one of the reasons we see things in the United States we don't see in other parts of the world in the same levels. So actually that probably makes no sense. I was going to say, when you look at certain police brutality instances, it's interesting if you go to a country like Sweden or Norway, which are overwhelmingly white, and they say, oh, but we don't have these things. And I'm like, perhaps race plays a role, and there's some kind of racism that can go in any direction that doesn't exist in a homogenous community where they all agree, speak the same language, and do the same thing. So it's not necessarily about race. It's about, I guess, familiarity. But I guess my point was that in the United States, there are segregated neighborhoods all over Chicago. It's all totally segregated. No joke. You go from Archer on the south side, you go past Cicero, and the billboards are now in Spanish. You go the other direction, and then you got a bunch of signs in Polish. So how are these people going to, interact or work with each other when they're just very distinct and separate culturally, morally, and linguistically? I feel like that could lead to an inability for people to come together and work together.
For sure. Familiarity is key. If this isn't a race war, if anything, it's like a class war or familiar. You tend to be afraid of what you don't understand, the unknown, and language plays directly into that.
And a bias towards the in-group. So if you're an English-speaking American, you have a bias towards people who are like you.
And those within, the Polish community in Chicago aren't going to be able to branch out and work. Their jobs are in their community. That's why their community, there's no way to go up. They're kind of stuck in that circle. There's no opportunities outside because you don't speak the language.
But the older generation. So what happens is the kids all speak English. Luke, for instance, he was on the show for a little bit, and then he just abandoned us.
Yeah, he left.
Because he's a cold, callous individual.
Acapulco, Mexico.
He went to Florida, I guess.
Shame.
But he was born in Poland. He moves here. He grows up speaking English. He talked about how it was not so easy for him because when he came here, he didn't. But then he did, and now he's an extremely, in my opinion, extremely important American defending American values.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm not super concerned necessarily with people coming here who don't speak the language. if they can function and they can work and they can, be a part of the community, their kids will grow up. And it's really just about if we're doing if we're doing right by our kids and teaching them important values. However, I guess that's not something we're doing entirely at this point. A lot of people don't want to have kids. They're talking about how, I can't raise a kid in this environment. And it's like, if you don't have kids, then who's going to have kids? It seems like idiocracy,
Well, a lot of it too, they're excusing themselves to be able to extend their own childhood. A lot of it is not that they still want kids. Maybe in a different life they'd want kids, but right now they're it's a me generation. It's the most selfish generation ever.
I think the idea of childhood is a modern creation. So it's interesting when I can't remember who it was, a Republican was like, kids need jobs. And then the Democrats were like, you want to go back to the 1900s, putting kids in factories? And it's like, no. But kids should do work
Mowing
with the family. Right. But more than that, I think kids should spend more time seeing what their parents do for a living, understanding the real world, and we should be treating kids like adults. The problem is, as generation to generation has come and gone, it seems like it used to be you had a kid, the kid had to grow up fast. There was war, there was death, there was famine. Stop crying. You're 13. You're a man now. And that's pretty brutal. And we're like, nah, we want to be kind of chill. But we keep pampering the next generation.
Oh, yeah.
Now it's like kids are, I say kids. Now you got people who are 26 years old. And they're just getting out of college. And they've never had a job in their lives. It's like, dude, you're 26. Amazing.
I learned how to cook when I was 14. I didn't even realize this. I just realized this a couple days ago because I'm a bit of a chef, a cook. I love cooking. I love the smell, making this. And I used to work at a chicken shack when I was 14. I think that directly contributed to my ability to understand food. I didn't even think of that, but you gotta learn, teach.
You learn young too.
Dude, when I went to South America, the kids would be boat captains at the age of 9. You'd go down the Amazon or the Ataya, and they'd be full on running the show, 9-year-olds.
Imagine being 15 from one of these countries. You come to the United States and you've been a boat captain running your own business. And then you come here and you see all these 15-year-olds sitting around picking their nose and you're like, wow.
What are you doing?
How are these people going to you know what it is, man? It is capital city. Hunger Games, man.
Affluenza.
It is, yeah. Americans in general are suffering from affluenza as a whole.
A judge adjudicated that affluenza was a thing.
Right. Yeah. But listen, that's the specific case. It's kind of I roll my eyes at that ruling's ridiculous. But think about Americans in general. 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, 17, 18-year-olds who don't have jobs and never did.
I had a job at 14, and before that I was volunteer at the YMCA.
What was your job at 14?
Fast food.
Perfect.
Yep.
At
that
14?
was 14.
But how are you legally allowed to do that?
Because you could work at 14. I'm older than I look.
Like a worker's permit?
Yeah.
When did they change the law to be that you had to be 16? Or
shortly after I started working.
Interesting.
Oh, even with a worker's permit? I was able to.
I don't know, actually.
I didn't get a worker's permit.
I worked in my family business
Yeah.
when I was real young, so.
Yeah, and
First
a lot
I was
of
working under the table.
kids, I come from a family, a lot of them live up in rural Vermont, and they all own farms, and those kids have been, collecting eggs from the chickens since they were 5.
Yep.
You gotta.
My first job.
Yeah, you gotta have a sort of responsibility, a personal responsibility to become a well-rounded person.
When you don't, you end up with a bunch of woke, me first.
You end up lacking responsibility and accountability, and that's kind of why America's in chaos right now. No one takes any responsibility for what they do.
That's why it's crazy to me when people come over, I'll have guests, and they'll be like, they'll look at my work schedule and be like, you're crazy. And I'm like, I think you're crazy, man. No offense to some of these people, but I used to work every weekend as well. Now weekend is partially administrative with some time off to relax, go out to eat or whatever. But it's I work, 8 to 4, and then I work 7 to 11 every day. And in between, all I'm doing is eating or exercising. It's all of my time is consumed. And I'm like, what would I do if I wasn't working? What do you do for fun? I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? Do you just sit there?
Yeah,
Binge watch
my
Netflix,
mind, man.
maybe?
Meditation. No, you blank your mind. It's awesome.
That's weird.
You get younger.
That's weird to me.
Regeneration.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, I think you have a hobby and you do your hobby, and you raise your family if you have a family,
do your chores,
and I know there's a lot of people without purpose, and so that's kind of a cancer right now in America too, because they think they find a purpose is something you just want to commit your life to. A lot of people, especially the older generations, their purpose is their family. They have they've set money aside, they just dote on their family, they they love their family, they spend time with their family, but you get a younger generation and their purpose is the next big drama. And they commit their whole life to this. They're going to go to protest the wall. And that's their purpose. That's their whole life. They put everything into it until that passes and their purpose is gone. So then they have that drop.
Speaking of purpose,
yes.
Let's talk about this story from Bounding into Comics.
Excellent.
Marvel Comics author Ta-Nehisi Coates compares Jordan Peterson to the Red Skull in the latest issue of Captain America. And this plays into purpose, accountability, responsibility, and for some reason, the woke left desperately trying to defend Nazi ideology, probably because they share that ideology to a great degree. For those that aren't familiar, the Red Skull is quite literally a Nazi scientist in the Captain America comic. He was the villain for Captain America, and it was written when, like World War II and stuff. So Red Skull's a Nazi. In this latest iteration, the Red Skull is apparently a YouTube self-help guru who is telling people to, the 10 rules for life or something. And I just love the idea how insane this comic is. Let me see if I can, I'll pull up.
Yeah.
Here it is, right here. Check it out. Captain America, he's in this hospital, and he says, so let me guess. Your brother, he disappears into the internet. And when he comes back out, he can't stop talking about his new theory of the world. And that theory comes from one man, the Red Skull. And look at this laptop. Chaos and Order, Carl Luger's Genius, The Feminist Trap. And it's the Red Skull saying 10 rules for life.
Wow.
Very obviously Jordan Peterson. Could you imagine if, the internet actually allowed a former Nazi scientist to go on and preach extremism? They barely allow conservatives to say learn to code. They're going to allow the Red Skull on the internet.
Is this real?
Is this a real joke?
This is
No,
real.
this is real. This is
This
real.
is the real life.
Yeah. Sorry.
Look, dude, listen, this is important. When you live the most privileged, pampered, affluenza life, and then along comes a psychologist who's like,
Clean
hey,
your
clean
room.
your room. That's violence. It's painful.
Be responsible.
No, but seriously, these people are wads of cookie dough. They are puffy little pink marshmallows that you touch them slightly and it leaves a dent, and they start screaming because they've never experienced the sensation of touch before. So you get someone like Jordan Peterson who's like, clean your room. And it's like, how dare you tell me to do work? Work is not real. It's offensive. Genuinely, I believe these people feel physical pain when someone calls them a name because they've never experienced it before. It's like for the first time in their life, they're feeling a negative emotion because someone doesn't like them. These are people who grow up and they're given a trophy for everything. They go to school and then, they answer the question wrong. That's okay. Here's your trophy. And they're like, yes, there's my dopamine rush. Get it wrong, you get the award anyway. Now they're older and they finally graduate college outside of their bubble, and then they're walking down the street and some guy goes, you suck. And they go, and they just drop to their knees and start hyperventilating. Or Jordan Peterson writes a book where he's like, if you want to be better, take responsibility for yourself.
Stand up straight. Stand up straight. Don't let anyone ride your back.
Yeah.
That's it.
He's amazing. Clinical psychologist, professor, vocal advocate for human rights. It's
Brilliant.
And Red Skull. Wow.
And apparently the Red Skull.
And a Nazi scientist.
Good job, Jordan.
Can you imagine Captain America, his persona is opposed to classical liberalism and responsibility?
Nope. Don't see it.
It's the antithesis.
Right. It's like Captain America may as well be Hydra at this point. Although they did that at one point, I guess.
Who wrote that comic?
Ta-Nehisi Coates?
That's
yes.
like
He's an activist.
a critical. Oh, it's an
He is a
activist. Is
critical
writing
race
Marvel
theory
comics.
activist.
Yeah, occultist.
He's a journalist, right?
Cult,
Yeah.
cult dogma, racist. I would say, they try to use language for all their arguments. What's the? I don't want to say Nazi. They like to use that word, but it's become rather meaningless. And they call Jordan Peterson a Nazi, and it's like he complains about the Nazis. And he's a classical liberal psychologist who tells people to be responsible for themselves. That's not Nazism. So these people are something very similar. They hold a lot of the same belief structures and values, right? They're pro-segregation. They, Ibram X. Kendi, for instance, said, the only solution to past discrimination is present discrimination, which is identitarianism, which overlaps greatly with the Nazi ideology. And you have classical liberals who are be responsible for yourself. The rights are for the individual and things like that. They're trying to villainize those who believe in freedom and liberty because they're authoritarians. It's and they want people to bow to their cult. So it's no surprise they're trying to liken Jordan Peterson to the Red Skull. The crazy thing about it, though, is what they're effectively doing is they're making Nazis look good, which is the creepiest thing about it. Jordan Peterson's popular. He's a famous guy. He's a mainstream personality. The left might call him controversial, but he appears on talk shows about a variety of issues. So for them to be like, the Red Skull is a Nazi and like, this is, Jordan Peterson, it's like, are you trying to make it look like Nazis are mainstream and accepted in society? Apparently, yes.
Yes.
Because they want to use that as a boogeyman. So they soften the view and they defend it. So over at the comic, I'll show you a little bit more. This guy says, Captain America says, it's the same for all of them. Young men, weak, looking for purpose. I found the flag, you found the badge. They found the skull. He tells them what they've always longed to hear, that they are secretly great, that the whole world is against them, that if they're truly men, they'll fight back. And bingo, that's their purpose. That's what they live for, and that's what they'll die for. It's kind of funny, this idea that, like, individualists are more likely to die for their ideals than a collectivist. I kind of don't know if that's true. You know what I mean? Like a communist is going to be
the hive is willing to expend the drones way more readily than the individual. The individual will defend their lives, to the last foot.
But maybe individuals recognize the importance of individual action, and that if they don't stand up, no one will. Whereas collectivists are like, someone else will do it. Why should I have to? So yeah, maybe.
I keep thinking that the Red Skull and Superman are going to do a crossover.
What?
Michael Malice and Jordan Peterson.
Oh.
They did an interview a couple days ago. This is a little off topic, but I want to get it out.
Now that Jordan Peterson is the Red Skull.
Yes.
And of course,
so
Michael is Superman.
They have an upcoming interview. It is really dumb. I'm almost aghast and dumbfounded.
The left can't meme.
They really can't.
Yeah.
Wow.
Look at this. There's more. They say later at the conclusion of the issue, Red Skull's followers proceed to overwhelm a wounded Captain America before he is rescued from his attackers by an armored Sharon Carter. In turn, Red Skull takes footage of Roger's defeat and proceeds to use it in a propaganda video, appealing to the various racist and terroristic groups who've taken up his message by offering them a metaphorical sword of manhood. He says, "What has happened to the men of the world is truly one of the great tragedies of our time. Once the American man was a conqueror, now he is but a caretaker. And a caretaker of what? He stands for some amorphous dream, a dream of nothing. But what I offer you is more than just some petty dream, more than a life of tending the hearth. No more shall women be summoned to fight your battles. I offer steel. I offer steel for your spine and iron for your gut. I offer you the sword of manhood."
That's so cringy.
This sounds like a take on his Jordan's explanation of the meek shall inherit the earth, meaning not the weak. What it actually means is that those with a large weapon that choose not to use it, those are the meek, and those are the people that are usually the most respected and the ones that
They have self-control.
Yes.
You ever listen
and
to the
obviously this guy
crickets?
destroyed that
That's
message.
why
And
we were
made it sound like he's
born
trying to
for the
weaponize
hunt.
people.
Well, that also lets you know that he's a threat. His words are a threat. Yep,
Oh,
Jordan
yeah.
Peterson is threatening to them. That's why they have to be like, nope, he's a Nazi, and I'm going to meme about it because I'm good at that.
Maybe. I also kind of think that they're just really dumb.
Yeah.
And so they
Possibly.
need something to be a villain, and they don't know, so they choose Jordan Peterson, and it literally makes no sense. Because if you actually look at Jordan Peterson, he's like, Nazis are bad.
I'm
and they're like,
guessing-
well, that clearly means that Jordan Peterson's a Nazi, so...
I'm guessing he probably sat there and he's like, all right, who are
I'm done
some
with you.
self-help, who are some mainstream conservative, well, everybody they don't like is conservative.
Right,
He's not.
he's not
But,
even-
who are like, he's pro-masculinity. So who are some big voices that are pro-masculinity? Because masculinity is evil right now. They are feminizing the military. They want nothing to do with masculinity right now. That's bad. It's all toxic. All masculinity is. So you wonder if he sat there and they kind of went over different mainstream, men who have a podium and just landed on him by like a roll of the dice too. And we're like,
Where does this lead to? If our comic books, our movies are telling men not to be masculine, they're saying masculinity is toxic, and they're trying to prop up people like Brie Larson, who's just like a really mean person. I imagine it's like Idiocracy did predict social justice. For those that have seen the movie, you guys have seen Idiocracy, right?
No.
Part of
I
it,
haven't.
no.
The idea is that evolution stopped rewarding the strongest and simply rewards those who reproduce the most.
It's us.
So, like, stupid people are having tons of kids, and smart people are like, now's not the time. So, in 500 years, everyone's really dumb. However, what they didn't account for is wokeness. So I'm imagining if all of these media outlets are saying, be effeminate, essentially. Don't be masculine. Masculinity is wrong. Jordan Peterson's a bad guy. Eventually, you're going to get a bunch of dudes who are the epitome of toxic masculinity, and society is going to be a bunch of wimpy, frail, scared, and effeminate men. And then the strong men will just walk in, take over.
Yep.
No one's going to be able to do anything about it.
That is one way. Also, another different direction would be like if people start creating new art forms, new comic books, a new comic company comes out with a new set of heroes that are legit, like more understandable and relatable, and we diverge evolutionarily. I don't think Homo sapien is the end of our route.
We're going to become robots. Bro.
Some of us will become robotic humans, cybernetic. Some of us will become psychic. Some of us will become like more animal. And some of us will live on Mars. Some of us will live in orbit with larger bodies. It's all coming.
I don't know what that has to do with comic books.
Well, some of these weird critical race people might evolve into some bizarre self-hating race of violent humans.
I really don't think that's a possibility, because that would take hundreds of thousands of years for a divergence.
But also,
scale.
I think technology is speeding up our evolution.
Right, but that's because we're incorporating technology into our bodies, which could ultimately mean we transform into some kind of robot creatures.
And television rapidly evolved us.
But I want to say this in regards to Captain America, and you mentioned new comics and new movies and new shows. So one of the things I'm doing is actually I've received a few pitches for TV shows and movies and stuff, and we're on the verge of basically green lighting a comedy series, which is it's going to be on timcast.com, I imagine, and we're just going to start doing more of that, just making cultural stuff that's fun, funny. It's not woke. It's not going to be culture war stuff. It's just going to be funny stuff. It'll probably poke fun at politics. But I look at this. Who cares about Captain America anymore? I got to be honest.
No one.
Like, dude, it has been 70 years. You know what I mean? Like, at a certain point, do they make new comic books with new heroes and new arcs and new stories? Or do we just keep rebooting the same characters and then just trying to make it relevant for some reason? Sorry, dude. I like the movies. But here's the thing about the MCU. They did 3 Captain America movies. And then Captain America did the Avengers. They brought them all together. And then he's like, I quit. Because at a certain point, they realized Captain America in the movie can't carry on anymore. So then he goes back in time and boom, he's gone. Tony Stark. He does a bunch of movies. He obviously 3 Iron Man movies, the 4 Avenger movies, plus he was in Civil War. And then they were like, Robert Downey Jr.'s run his course. We can't keep using Iron Man anymore. Time for him to move on.
There'll be a new one like they do with Spider-Man.
Sure. In the MCU, they need a new character, and they're bringing old characters to life. They probably should have new characters, sure, fine, but at least in the MCU, they recognize at a certain point, we've exhausted this character, we retire them.
And unfortunately, the MCU is Stan Lee. Stan Lee made almost all those characters, the Hulk, the Thing. I mean, he made all Fantastic Four.
So I think they're trying to maybe keep him alive too, like in spirit, by keeping to, reboot his vision. Like WandaVision just came out.
It was bad.
Yeah.
I thought WandaVision was terrible. Yeah. Did you see it?
I watched it through. I didn't really have a strong feeling. I just got told I look like
just tortures.
Wanda.
Oh, yeah, you do.
You do.
Yeah.
She
got that a lot.
She tortures 3,000 people, and she's the good guy.
Nice.
And the first 3 episodes are just a waste of time.
The first 3 episodes, I was like, "Are we gonna keep watching this?"
I turned it off. We didn't watch it, and then I kept checking. I kept like waiting for social media posts, and then once I saw the show actually started at episode 4, I was like, okay, I'll watch it now. And then I was kind of like, they really drag it out and waste your time. Anyway, look, I digress. We need new characters. We need new stories. We need new heroes.
But I'll tell you, if I make new characters, new stories, I'm not making it for Marvel. That was Stan Lee's company. And
you know what it is?
Disney owns it now.
Stan Lee and
Walt's gone
Jack
too.
Kirby and who else? There was a
Jim Lee. I mean, he did a lot of art there, but
there was a handful
Jack
of people
Kirby.
back in the day.
What did Kirby do?
He created a bunch of the characters. So back in the day, you had these people, and they were geniuses. They were visionaries. They were like, I got an idea. It's this guy, and when he gets mad, he turns into a big green monster. I believe he originally wasn't green. I think he was like gray or something. Oh. Then they were like, the printing isn't so great. It's like heavy on the ink or something. They changed them, something like that. Could be wrong. But we grew up with that being normal. We grew up with the ideas of these superheroes just existing, whereas back then they were new and exciting. And it was like, wow, Superman. You know, Superman originally couldn't fly. He could just jump really high. And then there was a period where you could shoot a small Superman from his hand. See, they weren't afraid to experiment. They were like, let's do a comic where Superman can fire a Superman from his hand, and it's a little version of himself.
Harry
Probably
Potter.
the stupidest power I've ever heard of in comic book history. Stupid.
That's the Patronus,
They
right?
were high.
Harry
Yeah,
Potter.
it
No,
is,
the
yeah.
Patronus is like a ball of hope and happiness. Takes the shape of an animal. So I think respect to J.K. Rowling for creating a universe
Hey,
that
good
was
point.
not the same. Then
And
she
you
tried
see how
getting
successful
woke.
it was. That was incredibly
Exactly.
successful. We need that stuff.
So here's what I think we end up seeing. We have a bunch of regular people who are not the geniuses that were Stan Lee, right? And so all they can do is take what someone else made and move it around. And you end up with the lowest common denominator. This Jordan Peterson comic is scraping the bottom of the barrel so hard, they've ripped through the bottom layer of wood and they're just pulling up dirt. They're not even getting barrel anymore. They just don't even realize they're in the dirt right now. Nobody's going to eat that, dude. That's not food. The wood chips weren't food. You're done. Not only have you repurposed Captain America to a ridiculous degree, now you've made Red Skull a classical liberal or something. Now then he's alt-right, I guess. It's the weirdest thing to not only repurpose it to such a degree that it's stupid, but then try and spin some mainstream critique that doesn't even work. It's one thing if you were like, the Red Skull is still a Nazi and he's got a plan to steal all the gold from Fort Knox and Captain America must stop him. You're like, all right, kind of generic, I guess, but it's about a Nazi and a guy fighting him. Now it's like he's on the internet making YouTube videos and it's like, wow, you've reached a whole new level of stupid.
There is a metaphor between Hitler and the YouTube blogger because Hitler basically was the first dictator to use mass media and whip a nation into a frenzy with video.
Propaganda.
With yeah,
They
he's
had
a
the whole
propaganda master.
Department of
Right,
Propaganda.
but
yeah.
Jordan Peterson?
No, not
They
Jordan.
could have picked any one of these alt-right
I think they
dudes.
just think that Jordan Peterson's alt-right and they equate alt-rights with the Nazis. You know, so like
They are closer
they
to
don't
Nazi than
critically
Jordan
think,
Peterson is.
oh gosh, yeah, definitely. They're all about collectivism, and that's what the Nazis were all about, the fascism of that.
I would highly advise watching Jordan's breakout video where he's speaking to a group of students outside about not forcing compelled speech.
Yes.
Yes.
That's so key. And he was saying, I've studied the Nazis. I've studied the totalitarian dictatorships of the communists. It begins with compelled speech.
And he was
Forcing
right.
people to use pronouns. Do not do it.
Well, there was a guy who was ordered to stop referring to his child as his daughter, and he got arrested for that, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, it was a
His child
contempt
got
of
taken
court,
away.
I think. Yeah, so they were like, you have to refer to your child as a boy, and he was like, no, and then they were like, you're under arrest, and then Jordan Peterson was like, I told you, and here we are.
Doesn't it seem like everything they do is a reflection? Like they talk about words
Projection.
being
Projection.
You'll escape
No,
with your
reflection.
life.
Listen. Okay, listen.
You
So it's a
cannot
reflection
run
because
or
everything they say,
hide.
they're like, we don't want to be racist. All we're going to do is break up white people and black people. We don't want any kind of hate speech. All we're going to do is separate a parent from its child because they used the wrong words. It's an inversion of what they're telling us. They're like, we want to be more kind and more compassionate. We're going to invite people to cross a desert and die and be trafficked for the sake of our compassion.
Well, that's why they say it's projection, because they're complaining about what they do.
Right.
They're saying other people do this awful thing
Oh,
that
yeah,
they
it's
actually do.
100%.
This is,
Projection.
makes me think about libertarianism. We were just talking about this. Why I'm reticent to force my political views, no matter how benevolent I think they are, on other people. Because I know that is a phenomenon where we reflect
You
our
got
own
a good head
negativity
on
or
those
project or
shoulders.
refract or whatever.
We are the
So
apex
I have this kind of
predators.
hands-off approach to what I think other people should do. But sometimes there's such tragedy being invoked that I feel like I have to. But so does this guy, and that's what he's doing with this weird comic.
Right.
Like, where do you draw? I mean, you're
Well,
explicitly libertarian.
actually, I want to use this to
You'll
launch off
escape with
something you
your
were talking
life.
about earlier pertaining
Maybe.
to the COVID vaccine passports.
Oh yeah.
And what you brought up something really interesting that I immediately was like, nah, you can't be right about that. So let me do this first. We got some news from Fox. Biden administration will not require
Looks like
COVID-19
you weren't
vaccine
fit to
passports.
survive.
White House says. Jen Psaki says there will be no federal vaccinations database. Now, this is kind of to assuage the fears of people who think the government's going to mandate everybody get a vaccine passport, but they've long said we can't do that.
The
We won't do
curse
that.
is affecting me
The
more
private
than I
sector will
thought.
do that, which is still interesting because I'm not sure the private sector can do that because of a
Now
lot of laws
this
that already
is
exist,
a hunted
non-discrimination laws,
body.
the ADA, etc. But I bring this up because we're talking now about libertarianism, authoritarianism, and what the government is or isn't allowed to do and what we should support. So we'll do a hard segue, I guess, and just because I want you to bring this up. You mentioned that the COVID vaccine passports are not legal
Yeah.
because of.
So we have a right to medical privacy. all
Wait,
right?
wait. Just use the fancy buzzword.
Oh, I'm I gotta trans-
You wanna
gotta
build the suspense.
Build up the suspense for it. All right. So in 1973, the Supreme Court determined that we are entitled to medical privacy, and this was a 7-2 ruling. Roe v. Wade determined that we are entitled to medical privacy. So Roe v. Wade and the vaccine passports contradict each other.
What?
Yeah.
Interesting.
See, I didn't know that, but
Yes.
they in their ruling they said
Yes.
your medical history is your private.
Yes, they used the 14th Amendment, and they said the government cannot compel you to expose your medical history. Like, we can't control that. We can't. You are entitled to your medical history.
I've
not
heard
for
the
us.
14th Amendment thing, but what would that stop a private company? I guess theoretically, I guess you could sue because a private company has no right to your medical history.
Yeah,
denying you a service based on medical history.
I mean,
would be a
they'd have
violation
to.
of the ADA.
It's crazy because they'd have to go through you to get it. So they couldn't like go through your doctor because that'd be a violation of HIPAA laws if they went through your doctor.
Right.
So they'd have to go through you. So it'd have to be up to you to expose that. But I feel like you could bring a civil rights violation against them trying to make you expose your medical rights to like buy milk.
Right. There was a big thing with masks where people started saying that they would print out these fake cards where it's like, I have a medical condition and protected under the Americans with Disabilities Act. And then they would go and walk around, and if someone in a store was like, you gotta wear a mask, I'd be like, no, I don't. I have this card. Okay, sure. Look, the card's not real, but I think the idea actually is.
Yeah.
It's like, imagine if a store was like, you can't come in here because your legs are broken. We don't want to risk the lawsuit if you fall and get hurt.
Yep.
So they say the same thing. Well, we require you to be vaccinated. My medical history and what I can or can't do is none of your business. And that goes into the bigger question of, they've said, if you're pregnant, don't get the vaccine. They said if you have allergies, you got to wait. And Joe Biden recently announced he's upped the timeline so that every adult can get the vaccine by April 19th. But what if your doctor tells you, for this reason, we don't think you should?
My doctor told me I shouldn't
Why is that?
because I have a blood condition.
Interesting. So now you're going to go to a store and they're going to say you need a vaccine passport, and then you can say it's none of your business.
Yeah.
What my doctor told me and why is none of your business. And what's going to what do you do?
I'll probably get kicked out.
Well, that would be a violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Americans with Disabilities Act is very specific with what they consider a disability. Like my blood condition isn't like, I'm not sure what's on there, so I don't want to misquote it. But I know I couldn't get disability or Social Security or anything from what's the matter with me. So
I wonder if that is required, because if you're also immunocompromised, that should be taken into account as well, because I probably won't get it because I am.
yeah.
So look, the ADA, adata.org says the Americans with Disabilities Act became law in 1990. The ADA is a civil rights law that prohibits discrimination against individuals with disabilities in all areas of public life, including jobs, school, transportation, public and private places that are open to the general public. The purpose of the law is to make sure that people with disabilities have the same rights and opportunities as everyone else. The ADA gives civil rights protections to individuals with disabilities similar to those provided to individuals on the basis of race, color, sex, national origin, age, religion. It guarantees equal opportunity for individuals with disabilities in public accommodation, employment, transportation, state and local government services, and telecommunications. So I wonder if they would argue that, okay, so actually it says in 2008, the ADA was signed into law and became effective on January 2009. It's the Americans with Disability Amendments Act. It made a number of significant changes to the definition of disability. The changes in the definition of disability apply to all titles of the ADA. So I have to go through all the changes, but I'm curious if your doctor says, I'm sorry, because of your condition, you are not able to get this vaccine.
She said I wouldn't recommend it.
You got to take your doctor's advice.
I know. Yeah. So
for everybody listening, if your doctor says you should, listen to your doctor. If
Yeah.
your doctor says you should, listen to your doctor, because I think, you don't want to be getting advice from people on the internet.
According to that, what you just read, it didn't say anywhere in there that like a restaurant cannot refuse service to someone because of a disability. It sounds like that law doesn't protect
It does.
people.
Public accommodation
Public
means
accommodation.
restaurant.
But it's a private accommodation.
Public accommodation means like a service provided to the general public. So a restaurant is a public accommodation
Because it's a store.
because it's open to the public.
Interesting.
So basically a private shop would be like members only, you can't come in. Public is a sign saying open. So if you're, so if somebody walks into your restaurant, you can't accuse them of trespassing unless you warn them first. If you have a if you have a closed private membership only restaurant and someone walks in, it's trespassing. Typically, you still got to warn people it's trespassing no matter what. But the general idea is if it says open, you're allowing people in, it's a public accommodation. But I mean, actually, it's more nuanced than that. Even a private membership business can still be considered a public accommodation. Like if someone says, I would like to join and become a member, and you say you can't because your disability, then they can sue you and say you're denying them a public accommodation.
Could it be like this is a COVID vaccine only restaurant?
That's what I'm wondering. I really don't know. It depends on the definition of disability. So I would imagine that means some kind of medical condition. And if you have a medical condition that prohibits you from getting the vaccine, this is why we want herd immunity, because some people can't get it.
Yeah.
Right.
Like there was this viral tweet from this woman. She's taking a picture of herself getting the vaccine. She's 14 weeks pregnant. Have you seen this?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's real. So again, take it all with a grain of salt. And I absolutely want to make sure I preface a lot of these stories. You know, don't take one story as evidence of widespread anything.
Anecdote.
Yeah, talk
Yeah.
to your doctor.
I
The
do
point-
personally know a pregnant woman who has gotten the vaccine.
and she's fine.
I haven't heard anything. Yeah.
There you go.
She's fine.
You
In
never
this
know, like
viral
long-term.
meme, a pregnant woman gets a vaccine and then a few days later has a miscarriage.
Yeah. And it could happen.
Jeez.
It could be
Right.
honestly miscarriages. When they happen, they usually were going to happen anyway.
Yeah.
At 14 weeks,
Sadly.
though, you're out of the first trimester, which is when 90% happen. And then, so, I mean, it could have just been a coincidence. It could have been related to the vaccine. We don't know that. It could have just been all ready to happen. And
Well,
happened.
there were in I think the UK, doctors said, if you are a pregnant woman, wait. If you have food allergies, wait.
Yep.
Talk to your doctor first. And so right then, it's like, what are we going to do? Are we going to deny someone access to the buy milk and bread because your doctor says no? I think
I don't think we
that's,
should.
I think that's a civil rights violation.
Yeah, I think so too. Human
Yeah.
rights in the way.
Imagine if they were like, you have to weigh a certain amount to come into the store, because we know that obesity is a contributing, like causes them large amounts of death every year. So you go to Walmart and they're like, ooh, you're too heavy to come into this store.
Or if someone has the flu. I
Like
mean,
70 or 80% of COVID deaths were obese.
78%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Large number.
that's alarming.
That's
Were
unsettling, yeah.
obese. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's why I think America is having such an issue with this, because we're so fat. We're fat guys.
I think
Yeah,
so.
there's
Yeah.
a lot of excess. That's sad,
I'm-
and such an
yeah.
important part of this
Be-
puzzle.
If you look at like the Mediterranean, they're not anywhere. And people are like, well, that's because they're social distancing and wearing masks.
No.
No, that's because they're not fat.
I saw a meme where it was like two lines going to two different kiosks, and one line was like shots and pills, and the line was saturated. All these people were, and the other one was change in lifestyle. and
Yeah.
nobody
Yeah,
was in
I
line.
saw that. Can we talk about fats on here?
Yeah. Hold on. This is interesting. Disability is defined, according to this website, as a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities. A record of such impairment, or being regarded as having such an impairment. That's interesting because the vaccine passport is what would make it a disability. If right now your doctor's like, here's our advice to you, and for your, you were advised because of your blood condition, you
Yep.
shouldn't get it. So that's not a disability. But if they then say all these businesses have to have vaccine passports, all of a sudden now it's restricting you from a major, major access to, services and stuff like that. Interesting.
Yeah.
And then you'd be able to get disability insurance because you couldn't go to the store.
I
Yeah, it's
wonder
a
how would
big
that work. You
slippery
got to hire
slope.
someone to do it for you.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, my blood condition, I don't create red blood cells. So that's why I'm so pale and why I get winded going up the stairs. But that's mine. And I mean, you can't really see it. You can't really tell. I don't want to, carry a passport around with it that tells, the stranger at the supermarket what's the
Yeah,
matter
like
with me.
sharing.
I mean,
Let's
See how
So this is the
sharp
issue
my
I take
axe
with the
is.
Libertarian Party, because the government isn't going to be the one starting the vaccine passports. They're oh no, we can't do it, and they can't. 14th Amendment, great. All these laws, sure, but a private company can. And then what happens? Oh, thank heavens it's not the government. It's just Walmart and Amazon. Amazon, you want to buy something online, it's like, before a delivery driver can come to your house, you must prove you're vaccinated. Otherwise, you're
Scan
putting
it.
our drivers at risk.
yep.
It's like, well, what am I supposed to scan your QR code, enter your vaccine number, and then that's what private companies will do.
Yeah. Well, that's a different. So I was talking earlier about libertarianism, how it's a spectrum from anarchy to constitutionalism. It's just a matter of how much government is necessary and how much government is needed. So, so an anarchist view would just be like, nope, we're just, they can do whatever they want until the cows come home, and there's nothing we can do. And it's like, for instance, it's like with what's going on with social media. Oh, they're like, create another. We're at a point where you need to create another internet.
Yeah,
At this point, like
definitely.
you can't create more social media, because they do that. Like Parler did that, and what happened?
Gone.
Yeah, so we're at a point where it's like, well, why didn't you just create another internet? And so It's like, okay, maybe Elon Musk will get on that. I don't know. But
Trump.
yeah, Trump could get
Yeah,
on
I don't know
that.
about
I mean, they could happen, but you're going to be bound to those rules too. So it's just a matter of, like I said, I'm a minarchist, so I believe in justice and defense. That's really the limits
We
of what
were
I believe.
born for the hunt.
To be the
The
government's
wilds are primal.
role for enforcing the Constitution.
I like 'em.
And so I would have to think at it from that
You
perspective.
messed
Okay,
with the
so are
wrong
people like,
woodsman.
where's justice gonna, like, are people gonna be, is there gonna be an injustice here? Like, if people are not being served, if people can't, is there an injustice? Should the government interfere because of this human rights injustice? Essentially, if you can't have, buy food, or if you can't, like, this is where it gets a little sketchy.
This is why I think the Libertarian Party is pro-authoritarian.
Yes, they are.
They're like the pawns of authoritarian, corporatist, monopolist power.
Yes, they are.
You have massive multinational corporations, and they're going, oh no, the government is being mean to our overlords. It's like, what? If you're actually for libertarian views, the little L, like true opposition to authoritarianism, it doesn't matter if it's a corporation or a government. They're both organizations, just in different capacities. The government is organized. It's an organized group of people who do a thing. A corporation is the same. They have structures. They have a hierarchy. They have control. Some companies are co-ops. Some are nonprofits. Some governments are democracies. Some are autocratic. Some are... I mean, you had that guy, what was that name? What was that guy's name in Uruguay? Jose Mujica, was that his name?
I'm not sure.
He was like the president. He lived on a little farm. He had a little car, and everyone loved him.
Oh,
'cause he was
yeah,
running
about
I
it.
remember him.
Yeah. So you have some governments like that.
Yeah.
Government is not the same thing everywhere, and corporations aren't the same thing everywhere. Both can monopolize power and cause problems. I happen to lean against, the reason communism and socialism are bad is because it's a bunch of people sitting down going, I have an idea. Let's centralize all the power with one group of people. And it's like, that's a really bad idea. And then the problem I see with ANCAPs and the Libertarian Party is they're like, we should allow major corporations to slowly accrue power so that a small handful of individual elites control everything. And I'm like, what's the difference if your life is dictated to you by someone else? So we need to restrict corporate power and government power. But we don't get that. We have the left has typically being like the corporations are bad and the right being like government is bad. And I'm like, hey, they're both bad.
They're both
You guys
awful.
are just both awful.
Yes.
Yeah, they're both. Yeah, well, they both are.
just
yeah.
awful.
Well, if you look at what these corporations are, like, we could have thousands and thousands of competitors. Like, we could have like everybody out there competing against each other. And what was I saying? That there are there's like 10 businesses, 10 corporations that just own everything. They just own everything. And what are some perks that they have? They have they get billions in subsidies, billions. They get special protections by the government. And then, they buy up their competition. And so there's language in the 14th Amendment for government granted monopolies, which if you're giving them money and you're giving them protections, you're probably granting their ability to exist. Yes. So if there's language against that those should not exist. And it's just not being enforced because too many of these politicians are dirty and they're profiting off these corporations. They're in bed with the corporations.
Well,
so
they're gonna
they're
gonna get a job once they get out of office.
Yeah,
It's a hard job, man. You're fundraising nonstop.
lobbyists maybe? Yeah.
You don't get paid that much money, but then afterwards you get this permanent access pass to Capitol Hill, and all of a sudden now you can do lobbying.
Yep, they can lobby.
These government-granted monopolies, they're supposedly du jour monopolies, meaning by law, the government is like instilling But these aren't du jour monopolies. These aren't like Twitter's not a government-granted monopoly, even though the government subsidizes. To be honest, I don't know what they subsidize with Twitter, but it's a de facto monopoly. They are by fact. It's not by law. They're not legally monopolized. They just have monopolized the social sphere.
If the government admits that they're, what'd you say, du jour?
Yeah,
du jour monopoly, then they have to abolish them.
Exactly.
So they're just going to exist de facto.
I hear a lot from the laissez-faire capitalist or ANCAP types, and they'll say things like, Tim, you're not talking about a real capitalism. Real capitalism, you're talking about corporatism and the government's interference, which creates these monopolies. It's only because of special access and special rules that the government holds back the competition and props up these big companies. And that's kind of true with Section 230, for instance. Empowers those that are massive to get away with whatever they want and then destroy their opponents. But I'm like, The idea that this isn't real capitalism just sounds like utopian to me. It's not real communism, sure. That's not real capitalism. I'm like, listen, capitalism is infinitely better than communism in a million different ways. Unfettered capitalism outright will eventually see power coalesce around a small handful of people with or without government regulation. We need to stifle that concentration of power. I don't necessarily know how.
Taxes is one way.
Yeah. The problem is it just powers the government then. You know what I mean? And the government just then grows and becomes massive. And then they effectively just create a revolving door between the massive multinational corporations and themselves.
I mean, you got to elect people who are going to be like, all right, you're a monopoly. We need to call you that. We need to get rid of you.
And also,
they're all puppets at this
the
point.
government's centralized too, which is a problem.
Yeah, exactly. It's a
know.
monopoly. The government is a monopoly. It's a monopoly on violence and the ability to take money from people.
We didn't have the
And
technology.
it's a bunch of millionaires. More than
Imagine
half.
if Netflix had a group of like people with guns that they would show up at your house and be like, you have to sign up for Netflix, and you're like, I don't want to. Too bad.
Yep, that's what
We're
it is.
here,
That's what
we own it.
taxation is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if the government made a social media site and then they were like, you have to sign up.
Well,
You're automatically signed up.
In
your
the
social security
UK,
number.
you have the TV licensing fee or whatever. Everyone has to pay it, unless you don't have a computer or a TV, and it funds the BBC, I guess.
We're in a weird place where centralized government, it still kind of works. Well, no, I mean, it kind of works, but we're building tech that allows us to decentralize the way we vote, the way we interact with each other via television, internet video, and things like
Nah,
that.
you only think that, bro.
Well, we're on the cusp of like a new way of, like, Putin and Biden could get on a YouTube video chat tomorrow and have a 2-hour live stream together.
Sure, that's not decentralization, though. That's pure
But
centralization.
Putin doesn't have to fly to DC. We don't have to centralize anymore.
Well, that's
They can-
semantics, bro.
No, we can communicate from
When
afar.
Right, when we're talking about decentralization, we're talking about distributing power between different nodes.
Address
not
me as
one
queen
point.
of the dead.
Biden and
please.
Putin arguing is pure centralization of power, and they're talking
Oh,
to each other.
you're talking about spiritually or psychologically.
Yeah,
Putting all the power in an individual, but actually centralizing the like Washington D.C. used to be the centralized
I
point
really don't
of our power
care
structure.
about
No
your
longer.
plans.
The government can function from anywhere and probably
Yep.
does.
It does. That's why the people storming the Capitol, it's like, what were you thinking? That was so stupid.
Right.
We're going to enter this building and that's it. It's like, no, that's not it.
Yeah.
It's the internet exists. What are you doing?
Yeah.
That's those people.
So maybe a government. I have a feeling a government will be.
You're
built
more
that
powerful than I thought.
facilitates the technology, and
I
suppose it's up to the people.
I
to build
think
it.
the blockchain stuff is valuable. I think crypto's valuable. But if you think that these technologies are decentralized, I got a bridge to sell you. You think that the U.S. government just sat back and watched Bitcoin grow exponentially and did not buy large portions of the blockchain and set up servers all over the place? Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. Okay, maybe we can say the U.S. government's inept, and that's possible. But I kind of feel like there's probably confidential stuff we don't know about. We know China was buying tons of Bitcoin. I'd be willing to bet the U.S. tried to buy 51% of whatever network they could, and they're constantly doing whatever they can to maintain control of that network. Because if they got 51%, then they own it. Not decentralized.
Sure. Well, we're not just relying on blockchain. There's other decentralized networks like Interplanetary File System, IPFS, and new ones that keep getting built. And
You
51% is
think too
better than
much.
100%.
Well, no, but what I
I
mean
know
is
what your point.
all they need in order to control 100% of a network is 51% of the computers. They don't
Okay,
even
that's why
need-
I guess why I said on the cusp. We're not at a point where we have a decentralized system, but that is a light at the end of the tunnel, maybe, or a light in the distance.
Decentralization would require like interstellar colonization.
You
know,
only
what,
think
what
you
what
won.
effectively allowed us to break away from the British Empire was the distance. 3,000 miles away, it was very hard for them to enforce anything.
Yeah, and if we don't have a decentralized system when we colonize Mars, it will be solar war. So we have to for our survival.
Solar war. I don't know if
We
we
do
get to
not
that-
want the first solar war.
I don't know if we'll get to that point
Or the second
because colonies on Mars or wherever else, they're going to require a stream of supplies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're not going to be able to survive on their own without resources coming in for some time. Maybe in 50 years to 100 years, we'll have biodomes and
We'll be taxing them and be like, we send you your supplies, and they're like, not anymore.
they throw all the space tea into the
Space harbor.
space
tea.
harbor on Mars.
There's so much
They
iron.
eject it into space.
Yes.
All that iron all that red dust is iron oxide.
Yeah.
There's a lot of iron on Mars.
They make Martian swords with it, send them back to Earth. But then the military's like, we don't sword fight anymore, so they don't buy them. And then Mars is like, what are we supposed to do? And we need food. And so then we buy them anyway as like a goodwill gesture to like make it seem like we actually are buying something, when in reality just like arbitrarily making them work in exchange for resources. They declare independence and they all die.
Oh.
Oh, okay.
All right, you know what?
Story was written for
We're
me.
going to talk about some serious stuff, but you know what? No, we're not.
No, I don't think so.
Speaking of Mars and aliens and whatever other nonsense we've been
Yeah.
talking about, check the story out from the Daily Mail. Former director of the CIA, James Woolsey, says he was skeptical about aliens until a friend's aircraft was paused at 40,000 feet, and he hopes we can be friendly to the other creatures if they exist. Let me say that again. Until a friend's aircraft was paused 4,000 feet. What is that,
What?
like
What does that
tractor beam? Like,
What friend is he talking about?
well, let's read.
Friends here.
A friend's aircraft? I thought that he said he saw it. He saw a friend's aircraft get paused?
Yeah.
Whoa.
it?
Yeah. Or, look,
I mean, he could have had a stroke.
Yeah,
Yeah.
possibly.
Yeah.
I was just watching Star Trek earlier, and it was the episode where time keeps freezing. Have you guys seen that one?
I've seen them all.
They're in the runabout, the shuttle, and then all of a sudden, Deanna Troi is sitting there, and everyone just freezes, like stops in time. And it's because there's fragments of space-time continuum moving, like shattering all around them,
Sounds
and
like
they're
a
moving
mushroom
through 'em.
trip. Oh my god.
Whoa.
So anyway, to then hear this story, I'm like,
That's what happened.
That's brilliant.
crazy. Check it out. Woolsey said that stories always seemed pretty far out to me, but there was one case in which a friend of mine was able to have his aircraft stop at 40,000 feet or so and not continue operating as a normal aircraft. What was going on? I don't know. Does anybody know? Woolsey said the source was someone I respect. John Greenwald Jr., the host, pointed out that the other former CIA directors have said they are open to the possibility of alien life. In December, John Brennan told a podcast he felt it was arrogant to believe that we were alone in the universe. Life is defined in many ways, Brennan said during the December 16th episode. Now, hold on. This story comes out, right? Another story came out. Another story comes out around the same time. What's up with this? NBC News. Drones that swarmed U.S. warships are still unidentified, Navy chief says. The military is expected to deliver a report later this year to Congress on the unidentified aerial phenomena. This is from April 5th, 11:24 p.m. Just last night, they published this story. A bunch of naval destroyers have tic-tac-shaped objects hovering for 90 minutes at high speed, just sitting there, beyond commercial drone technology. And they don't know what it is. So Marco Rubio talked about it, and he was like, whatever's going on with these things flying over our military installations, it's like a national security breach. Like, our security has been breached, and we don't know what it is. This is a major threat to this country. Then we get this story coming out where this dude's like, oh, yeah, my friend's aircraft was frozen at 40,000 feet. What is that?
All right. So I think that there's.
Aliens.
So I think this could be three different things, and I'm gonna probably forget them as I list them. But one, I mean, there could be some technology that China made that got in because they're targeting the military bases.
Right.
They're not. No normal people are seeing this. People in the government are seeing this. People in the military are seeing this. I'm not seeing it. You're not seeing it. You know.
What if it's
okay,
alien
yeah.
recon?
It could be aliens that are like, all right, we've targeted the uranium. I have no idea. So it could be aliens. All right. Okay. I'll put it out there. It could be aliens. We could have aliens. All right. It could be that they do know what it is, but aliens are more interesting.
Yes.
And so
Distracting.
it's going to distract us from whatever it is that is trying to kill us. Or it could be that they just put stories like this out. Well, they're passing draconian legislation, so we're distracted. I don't know. I got to look and see
Yeah.
what's going on in the legislature
That's
right
true.
now. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it could be that Earth is a zoo. You know the great zoo hypothesis?
Oh,
Do you guys,
yeah.
do you guys know about Fermi's paradox?
Lightly.
The general idea is like, if the universe is so vast and massive and life does exist, then shouldn't we have found some evidence of intelligent life somewhere else at some point? And so then there's a bunch of answers people propose, like there's the great, I think, what was it called? The Great Barrier or something? I don't know. The Great Filter, sorry. That all life at a certain point wipes itself out for some reason. One of them is the zoo hypothesis, that Earth is effectively a zoo and that we're in a big cage where the aliens come to watch us and giggle at the stupid things that humans do. I think South Park called it reality TV, that Earth was just a reality TV show for the